AI takeover, war with Iran, a looming energy crisis, and the worst economy that we've seen. And I'm going to talk about a fictional horse. Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel where I discuss things that pique my interest, mainly media related. And today I'm here to answer the question that nobody asks, nobody wants the answer to, and nobody really cares about. Except for like a niche group of people that actually do care about this sort of thing. Woo! Yeah, you're the one. But today I'm here to answer a very important question. How rich is Twilight Sparkle? I mean, don't let that humble little library life fool you. That girl comes from money, okay? She got money. If we look at the series, honestly, it does show that Twilight, she got a bit of bank. And by a bit of bank, I mean a lot of bank. In comparison to all her friends, she is the rich friend. She's the rich friend that everyone seems to forget is rich. So, let's establish a few things before we actually get into it. First things first, we'll be starting from the beginning of Twilight's life all the way until the end of the series. So from when she was a filly all the way until the very end of the series at season 9, okay? And we also need to get a general consensus of what type of city Canterlot is, since that's where she was born and raised in, and what we could consider a minimum income in a place like that. And then finally, we're going to add up all the money that she's accumulated towards her final amount that will appear at the end of the series. So, first things first, we need to figure out where exactly Twilight is from, and then try and find a real world equivalent for it. So, we already know that Twilight is from Canterlot, which is basically the capital of Equestria, since that's where the princesses live. So, finding a real world equivalent is going to be a little bit tricky, so just bear with me. For this analysis, I first want to start with where exactly is Equestria and what would be considered a real world equivalent for Equestria. So Equestria has quite a few different regions with different species that live there as well. So limiting it to only the pony sphere, so we're going to ignore changelings, griffins, dragons, all that stuff. If we limit it to only the areas where ponies only live, then we could make the assumption that where the ponies live seems to be heavily based off of North America, and then we can make an inference that it's a heavy emphasis on on America in Canada. And I mainly say this because it's America, because we already know that there's a city named Manhattan, and because there's a city named Manhattan, we can already say that Canterlot is not supposed to be New York. I already know that someone in the comments was probably very quick to be like, no, it's New York. It's like, no, Manhattan already exists, okay? It can't be New York, okay? Canterlot can't be New York. Canterlot is a completely separate city with Manhattan, okay? So it's not New York. It's not New York. Don't even start into my comments, okay? And then I also want to add in Canada, because there is a city that's mentioned in the series named Vancouver. But I will say, we don't know for sure if they're referencing Vancouver, Canada, or Vancouver, Canada, or actual Washington State, Vancouver. Because there's two that are coincidentally super close to each other. I don't know what the fuck was with that. How do you have Vancouver, Canada, and then Vancouver, Washington that are basically within the same distance of each other? Was no one original when it came to coming up with the names for those cities? What was going on here? So we'll just make the assumption that when it comes to the pony side of Equestria, that it's supposed to encompass just the top two countries of North America, which is America and Canada. Which makes sense, since I'm pretty sure most of the show producers were American and Canadian, so it makes the most sense. Now, as for an actual real-world city that we can use, that also gets a little bit tricky, but here's what I came up with. So, you see, Canterlot is a rich city, okay? And I mean a super rich city, where we see that many of the people here aren't just socialites, but also seem to have some sort of association with royalty or some sort of connection to royalty. And then there is a big difference between a city that just happens to be expensive and then a city that's made for rich people, okay? New York is just an expensive city, okay? Yeah, there's rich people that live in New York, but New York is just an expensive city, okay? It's not a city that's really made for rich people. It's just a city that so happens to be expensive. As opposed to a city like Monaco, where that's a city for rich people, okay? I don't think there's really anyone super, super poor in Monaco. That's a place where it's full of rich people, like a lot of rich people. So Canterlot is the type of city where even the poorest person would probably have at least 2 Porsches, at least. everyone got like 2 Porsches. Even if you're poor, you got like a Porsche, okay? Now, Canterlot can be looked at as being the capital city of Equestria. And with that being said, it's kind of hard to pinpoint because it's like if we're using both Canada and America, it's like, okay, well, we can't really say there's a capital city for the continent of North America. But we'll just use Washington, D.C. since it seems like the most references in the show seem to be more American based, since the creator and many other people who made the show were American. So we'll go with the American capital, which is Washington, D.C. And when it comes to the richest part of Washington, D.C., that would be the Northwest Quadrant, where many homes in this quadrant can go upwards of $1.5 million, with the lowest income for a family of 4 in D.C. in that area being about $92,000, which, you know, of course, it's an expensive city, so $92,000, that's low for them. But in many other places, that's probably pretty decent salary. So since we're going to base it off of that, and we're on the rich side of DC as well, let's just use that the lowest figure would be about like $750K, okay? Like, we're talking about the really rich sector of Washington, D.C., like where all the politicians and everyone lives. So we're talking anywhere between, like, at minimum, some of these people, even if a home is like 1.5 million, I wouldn't be surprised if they're at least like getting 750K. Like, that's probably the lowest someone is making there. Like, you're not a millionaire, but you're definitely making more than 500K a year. But let's go with 750K as our lowest figure, and we're just going to try and use as many round numbers as we can, because that's I'm not doing the math with any types of cents or anything, okay? We're not doing that shit. And this is all in USD, okay? All in USD. So, when it comes to Twilight's early life, we can already start off with her having a silver spoon in her mouth, okay? Twilight Sparkle got born with a silver spoon in her mouth. Well, we don't know what her parents did exactly. Like, we don't have an idea of, like, what type of jobs her parents have. It is very obvious that they made a lot of money. For one, let's just look at Twilight Sparkle's house. Now, we only get like a few scenes in the very beginning of the series about like what their home looks like, but based off of what we see, they got a big ass fucking home. A really big fucking house. Like a super big house. Like, this was her library. This was her parents' home. If her parents were able to afford shit like this, they had money. So let's say that possibly this home is like way more than that 1.5 million price point. But we're not going to get too much into that. I also want to talk about something else when it comes to Twilight and her early life. Because for starters, Twilight's babysitter was Princess Cadence. I feel like many of us skip over that fact of like Cadence being Twilight's babysitter. Not just in the fact like that's how close they are, but also in the fact that her parents were able to afford a princess as a babysitter. Like, and keep in mind, this was not like when Cadence wasn't an alicorn, right? Like, Cadence was already an alicorn at this point. Like, she was already an alicorn. She wasn't like a Pegasus or anything. Homegirl was already an alicorn, which is crazy to think about. And we have like no idea like what type of rate a princess is gonna charge for babysitting someone, but we're gonna try and take a crack at it. So, first things first, we already know for a fact that there's no familial connection between Cadence and Twilight's family, since she marries Shining Armor, and that would be incest. So, there's no familial connection that we can glimmer as to why she would have been babysitting Twilight. So, it seems as if she was just doing this from either extra cash or because maybe she was fucking with Shining Armor, I don't know. But let's assume that she was doing this to get some fucking money. Now, we also know from the comments that Cadence and Shining Armor know each other from school. And let's say that Cadence began babysitting Twilight when she was about 14 years old, and then she stopped at 18 when she like graduated school. Then we'll babysit Twilight about 4 times out of the month. You know, let's say her mom and dad had like a few date nights or a few emergencies, and so they needed a babysitter when their son wasn't around, and you know, they had Cadence do it. And let's say that she did that 4 times out of a month. Let's also assume that at the lowest she maybe charged like $500. Listen, I know y'all are gonna say, isn't that a bit much? She's a princess, okay? She's a princess babysitting a kid. I'm pretty sure that rate gonna be high as fuck regardless, okay? There are nannies that charge more than this, so I'm not even gonna front that it's not gonna be a high amount. But doing the math, 500 times 4 times out of the month, that's $2,000 a month. And then 2,000 times 48 months, since that would be 4 years, becomes $96,000 just for babysitting for 4 years. And that's not even like saying that, oh yeah, Cadence was like babysitting Twilight like all the goddamn time. Like, this is just her babysitting Twilight like 4 times out of a month. And again, we don't really know, again, what Twilight Sparkle's parents' jobs was. So we don't know if they were doing any type of like government work. So they were like out of town pretty often. We don't know if her parents had a lot of busy work. We don't know if her parents ever needed like overtime stuff from Cadence. So we really don't know the full extent of like how much, you know, Cadence was babysitting Twilight. But we'll just make that inference, because I think 4 times out of a month isn't the most insane option. Okay? It's not. It's not the worst thing out of a month. Now, on to schooling. To have your son be able to attend a school that a princess attends, you gotta have quite a bit of money to shell out. So we'll just use the most expensive private school in DC, which would be Sidwell Friends School. This is a private school that Barack's daughters attended, Barack Obama. And this school has a tuition about $47,000. Yeah, let's not forget that dear old Twilight either. Now, I'm actually going to be a little bit nice here and say that because Twilight showed such renowned magical skill, that Celestia gave her a scholarship when she made her protege. So we're going to just make the assumption that Twilight is technically going to school on a scholarship. However, Twilight does mention in her Cutie Mark story that her parents enrolled her into the school. And I don't know if you know this, but when it comes to these really rich private schools, there's like a whole process, and the enrollment process takes a lot of money. We're talking about money just to submit an application, like how you do with college. We're talking money to do an interview. We're talking money to do the actual entrance exam. So, a lot of money. Like, these types of elite schools don't even, like, you know, compare to that stuff. Like, let me just see with my notes where I had, I did the, here's the calculations here. So, this school would be the equivalent of if the Queen of England, if she were still alive, was not only owning the school, but was actively teaching at this school, which is a crazy concept to think about. So that's not going to be a cheap school at all. I'm just going to use Cambridge University because it's the best equivalent of like a very elite school, a very top school. So I'm just going to use Cambridge as an example, since that's the only price point that I think can make sense. So we're going to ignore the government cap that UK citizens have when it comes to these types of schools. So this school has a tuition of anywhere between $36,800 to $89,500 USD a year. It really depends on like the fees and everything and what you decide to study. Again, you know, she gets that scholarship, but you know, this is still like a crazy price point, because keep in mind, it's not as if Twilight's parents thought that she was going to get a scholarship and be selected as Celestia's protege. So these motherfuckers were probably not shocked to like pay a ridiculous amount, like maybe even $100K for their daughter to attend the school yearly. That's not even an insane thing. That's not an insane thing for me to say. That's not even an insane number to pull out my ass. Like, it's a school ran by your world leader that they actively teach in a super rich city. Like, yeah, it's not going to be cheap. Honestly, I think $89,500 is lowballing it. But hey, for the sake of it, it looks like her parents were willing to shell out a lot of money to have their daughter attend the school if they just enrolled her in it. It's not like Twilight asked them to enroll them. They just did it for her automatically. So that's something. But since they're not going to be paying for that, since we're going to assume that Twilight's on a scholarship, we're just going to focus on how much they probably paid to get her to do the test. Now, let's say there's probably a small deposit fee. Let's do about $120. You know, many schools give a deposit fee, some anywhere between like $30 to even $100. Maybe even over $100, depending on how elite it is. But I do know there are some elite schools that don't even do the fee, so that's something. That's just us being gracious. Now, we'll also be gracious and say that the interview was for free. They do interviews for these types of schools too. It's a whole thing. Yeah, these schools are elite. So the exam, however, definitely costs them. So some schools, if you don't have like the standardized test scores or anything like that, you're going to have to do the test, and the test is not free. Now, the test can range anywhere from being like, you know, again, $30, $50, $100. Even when I was applying for school in the UK, now I can't go. But when I was applying for school in the UK, I did have, so you're going to apply on UCAS, and UCAS, you pick 5 schools. You have to have 5 schools picked out. There's no if, ands, or but. You got to have 5 schools picked out. Once you have your 5 schools picked out, you would pay just a fee of $30 that would cover all of the schools. So that was all you really got to pay. But if you had to take any type of standardized testing, that was a different thing. Now, I already have 2 years of schooling under my belt, so because of that, I didn't have to pay anything to like do a test or anything. However, if I didn't speak English, I would have to have done an English proficiency test, which they kept pushing on me too, might I add. They just kept pushing it and pushing it. They're just like, we need to test your English proficiency. And I'm like, what do you mean test my English proficiency? I speak fucking English. That's my native fucking language. I guess they assumed it's because I was from the Virgin Islands, but I'm from the U.S. Virgin Islands. U.S. United States. We speak English. We're right next to the British Virgin Islands that also speak English. Like, come on, man. Like, I gave you a U.S. passport. Of course I speak fucking English. But whatever. That's just my little qualm with that system, but it's whatever. But considering that this test literally has you open a dragon egg, like you literally like the spell you have to use is opening a dragon egg, which I think is kind of crazy considering that these are fillies, but whatever. But to get a dragon egg, I highly doubt is a easy feat. It's not like the dragons are shown to be super nice people. Also, that's very questionable that the ponies are just taking dragon eggs. Is nobody finding how weird that is? That ponies are just taking dragon eggs to be used as like a test for literal children? Just stealing children from their home? Okay, that actually got weirder than I thought it was going to get. Wow. Okay. But let's say it takes about $3,000 because, again, we've seen how dragons act in the series, okay? They don't play games. They don't play games. So it was definitely hard to get a dragon egg for that test. So let's say they were paying like $3,000 for their daughter to take that test. So living in the city where most of the homes on the low end are 1.5 million, and then being able to pay $96,000 over the span of 4 years for a babysitter. Then you also have $47,000 for the first son's tuition for his schooling. That's not even including his younger education. This is like talking about his high school education. And then having an incredibly big home that is definitely way over 1.5 million, and then having to pay for your daughter's school test, and then also assuming that they knew that this school is going to be expensive because they had no idea that their daughter would become a protege. They probably were willing to shell out anywhere between the $89,000 to $100,000 to have her attend this type of school. So to afford this type of lifestyle that Twilight's parents were making, they had to have at least had anywhere between $10 to $20 million a year coming into their account to afford this type of life. I can't give you a direct figure, but like based off this lifestyle, based off of how we look at their house, based off of the money that they were willing to shell out, yeah, they were making money. They were millionaires. Twilight comes from some serious fucking money. Now, let's actually get into Twilight's own money. Now, I'll divide this into a few different ways, starting with her work at the library, then her accomplishments, and then also when she becomes an alicorn, okay? Alright, so starting at the very beginning of the series when Twilight is first assigned to Ponyville. Now, Twilight is obviously paid for her work at the library. Like, we see her use money all the time, so it seems like she's getting money. However, we don't really get a clarification if this is money that she gets because she works and lives at the library, or if this is money that she gets since she's on an assignment from Celestia. But let's just make the assumption that's easier for me, that she gets money because she works and lives in the library. Now, Ponyville is not Canterlot, okay? Which means their taxes and salary are going to be way lower than Canterlot is. Now, if we use DC as a model, then the average salary is roughly $87,000 to $94,000 a year for a librarian, which isn't the worst for a single person. However, since Ponyville is a bit more rural, it's just more of a small town, I say let's go down to Virginia instead, and more specifically Fairfax, Virginia, since it's the one that's the most similar, I would say, to Ponyville. Like, it's not like completely and utterly rural, but it's also not like full of like city life too. It's like a mix in between. So, you know, you got like the rural stuff, and then you got like it's very small. Again, I mean, it's not small town, but it's like, you know, small city vibes. It's not like super big. But more specifically Fairfax, and it's a bit more rural, because I know someone's going to say, oh, why not Baltimore, Maryland? And it's like, no, Baltimore is like a pretty major city. Like, no, we're talking about somewhere a bit more rural where we can like walk out a few ways and we can like see a fucking apple orchard. But you know, if it wasn't that, I would say Vermont. I don't know why. Ponyville gives Vermont vibes. I've never been to Vermont, so I could be dead wrong. But yeah, let's just say, you know, that's the case. So, the salary for a librarian in Fairfax is roughly $74,000 to $79,000 a year. Since she lives there, there's a portion of her check that probably gets taken out for room and board. So let's just say, splitting it in the middle, she makes a yearly salary of $76,500, and then we'll half that, so that's about $38,250 a year, because we're taking out money from her room and board. If every season is a year within the series, then let's say Twilight works there for 3 years before she becomes an alicorn until the end of season 3, then that means in total she made about $114,750, which not too bad in a span of 3 years. Not too bad, especially since she got to live there, so it's not bad at all. Now, on to her daring trials. Now, we'll say this. People who save the day don't always get monetary gain from it. It's not something that is always done. Maybe sometimes they might get a little bonus if they were like a police officer or a firefighter. It happens sometimes. But most of the time it's like a commemoration thing where you might get like a medal or this or that. But we do see, and many times, like, people do get monetary compensation for certain heroic acts. So it's not impossible to say that Twilight might have gotten some monetary gain from some of the shit that she did, considering some of the shit that she did quite literally saved their entire universe multiple times over. But I'm only going to count the things that she did before she became an alicorn, and I'm going to get to that pretty soon. So, just in case, let's try it. So the first thing we have is freeing Nightmare Moon. Now, freeing Nightmare Moon was something, I won't lie. Like, the first thing this girl did in the series was literally free her apprentice's sister. Like, that's crazy. Off the rip. First episode. That's crazy shit. That's real crazy shit. But it's something that does need to be rewarded. So it's kind of hard to calculate this because she is a princess that was technically banished by her own sister. But we'll try and see how much like a ransom would be for a royal. It's really hard to get a figure like this because this isn't like something that's happened a whole lot in recent history. So there's not like a lot of estimates that we can use, especially since the princesses are like so powerful. But we're going to estimate that it's about $500 million for a ransom of Princess Luna, considering the fact that she does help with like raising the moon, people's dreams, and a whole bunch of other things, as opposed to her sister who does the sun and everything else, who probably would have a higher ransom. So, you know, $500 million for Princess Luna, considering everything she does. And now Twilight's nice, you know, she's Celestia's protege, so I'm sure that they cut down that price a little bit less. And let's say maybe she got $100 million for freeing her sister from evil. Feel like that's a bit low of a price, but we're being generous here because Twilight's a generous soul. Next, Discord, who was in prison after Luna and Celestia failed, because Luna and Celestia did try to stop Discord, but then they both ended up failing. So saving Equestria from a literal chaos demon that can bend reality to his fucking will, pretty huge deal, especially considering how the princesses failed to do that. So, let's say she was awarded about $250 million. Again, that's being really low. Like, that's lowballing it, honestly. She stopped the chaos demon from ripping their reality to shreds. I'm sorry, she's not doing that shit for free. There's no way she didn't get some sort of monetary gain from that shit. I'm sorry to say it, but she had to have gotten something from that. Then there's also the wedding with Cadence and Shining Armor. Granted, I don't think she cashed out anything for this, mainly because it had to do with her family. And if we're being honest here, it was more Cadence and Shining Armor that laid the final blow. She just helped out a little bit. So she didn't get any cash for this. Now this one is probably going to be the lowest one, which is the Crystal Empire. This was before she became an Alicorn and was helping defeat Sombra and restore the Empire. Now, most of the Crystal Ponies thank Spike for this, even though, you know, Twilight was the one that was putting in a lot of the work. You know, she was the one that found it. She was the one that did the spell for it. And she literally was the one that launched Spike out the window so that he could put the crystal heart back into the spire. So she technically had a lot more involvement than the Crystal Ponies think that she does. But, you know, since the Crystal Ponies saw that Spike was the one that put it there, they're the ones who care a bit more about, like, Spike restoring the crystal. But I'm sure that she got compensated pretty well. So let's say she probably got at most 2 million, because it's not like the Crystal Ponies like see that she's the main reason that they got saved. They see it as Spike. So she gets like a nice 2 mil from that. That's not anything bad. Also, reading through this has made me realize Twilight's mother must have been insufferable to be around. I mean, like, thinking about everything that Twilight's done, thinking about everything that Shining Armor has done, oh, I know the mayors of the country could be pissed the fuck off. Right, so then I said, oh no, it's Twilight Velvet. Oh, not again. Hi, mayors. It's Hi, Velvet. It's so long. It's like we haven't talked to each other in ages. I'm so happy to see you guys again. You know, so much has happened. Last week, actually. So I know you two know my daughter, Twilight Sparkle, Celestia's protege, the newly founded princess. So you invited us to the coronation. Did you know that she opened up a school recently? It's been a smashing success. You know, she always loved learning about magic ever since she was a little filly. And now it's just miraculous to see the cycle continue. Now she gets to teach it and friendship as well. I'm so proud of her. It's just amazing. Totally. Oh, and my son, oh, my Shining Armor. I miss him so much. I love him. You know him, right? He's the one who married the princess? Yeah, it was a pretty big deal. Marrying a princess. Well, you wouldn't believe it, but him and Cadence had a baby. Congratulations. We're so happy to hear, really, truly. It must feel amazing to be a Grand Mayor. Oh yeah, it's not every day that you're the Grand Mayor to an Alicorn. What? You know, it's funny. You have the exact same look on your face like Princess Celestia did. She was utterly gobsmacked when she saw my little Grandmare. I mean, it was so incredible. I mean, it's not every day that an Alicorn is born. In fact, it's been over 1,000 years. Anywho, I just wanted to drop by because me and the hubby are going to head out over to the Empire to help the kiddos out with the baby. You know, all hands on deck for a baby Alicorn. So I'll see you guys in a few months. I hate her so much. Now, we finally reached the moment we've been waiting for. Twilight as an Alicorn. Now, you probably have been wondering why I've separated this. The main reason I did it is that it seems as if when you become an Alicorn, there are just certain responsibilities that you're given that don't exactly get awarded for the saving the public. It's like, you know, that's just your job as an Alicorn. Like, yeah, you're the Alicorn of this, you're gonna take care of these issues, you're gonna save these people whenever the times get really, really bad. Like, that's just your job, okay? Like, that's your job. You're not getting any additional compensation for that. However, being royalty means taxes. That's right. We're gonna use the British royal family as an example. Those OG colonizers, but we're gonna use them as an example. So there are 3 types of income that the royal family, the British royal family, get. Number 1, tax funded income. Number 2, private land income. And number 3, personal wealth. All things that Twilight would technically have. Like, you know, she probably would inherit her family's home, and then she also has her own palace as well, the Friendship Palace. So that's also probably something that she's getting money off of. I'm not calculating how much that fucking Crystal Palace is. I was already doing enough math when I was doing this shit anyway. So we're not even calculating how much that fucking castle is. For my own sake, honestly. Also, she did turn it into a type of school, so there's probably like some sort of tax exemption or something from that. And she makes it a free school as well, so, you know, that's something to think about. But when it comes to the British royal family, we're just going to focus primarily on the taxpayer amount. So, the British royal family, as of 2026 to 2027, will be getting a grant of £137.9 million, which translated to USD is $182,516,047.91. And now, Twilight is pretty new to being a princess and everything. So let's say that her cut is way smaller than this 182 million amount. Okay? It's a little bit smaller than that. So, if Twilight has like a smaller cut in comparison to the other princesses, let's say she's getting about 90 million a year. So, she gets 90 million every year, and each season is a year. Then by the end of the series, Twilight would have accumulated over the span of 4 years, 4 to 5 years. Season 4, season 5, season 6, season 7, season 8, season 9. Yeah, about that. About 6 years. So by the end of the series, she would accumulate about $450 million. No wonder she can make a free school. $450 million by the end of the series. Oh, and let's not forget, at the final episode of the show, the series finale, she is now the ruler of Equestria, which means she is now getting that full 182 million. We're not going to calculate all the different years. We don't know how old Twilight is at this point. We can assume that now she's no longer in her, 20s anymore, probably now entering into her 50s, and maybe even her 60s, depending on how old the rest of the cast looks. But, we're not going to calculate it too much. But, keeping everything in mind, let's get to the final results. When it comes to how much money she's made over her time in Ponyville till the end of the season, we're looking at, and this is a crazy fucking number, $984,630,797.91. And then, if we wanted to be petty, we could add in her parents' money as well. So let's say her parents had, going in between the middle of 10 million to 20 million, 15 million a year. And let's estimate that's about 18 years from when she was a baby all the way until she was 18. So that's 270 million that her parents are probably making throughout the course of her lifespan. Adding that in, we get a crisp total of $1,254,630,797.91. I guess the power of friendship is actually the power of money. Princess of friendship, more like the princess of the bourgeoisie. Am I right? I thought it'd be funny. I'm sorry, it's not a funny joke. But those are my calculations. Argue with the wall if you want. This is for fun. This is fictional. You can get on my case if you want, but you're not doing the calculations. But thank you so much for watching this video. Please like and subscribe, because if you subscribe and I get 15,000 followers before I finish my book, then I will allow you to vote on what cosplay I'll do for my author's photo. That's right. Monetization, view counts, follow me. Don't you want that? Don't you want a reward? Don't you want to see me humiliate myself? I mean, not humiliate myself. I mean, I think it'd just be fun to do a cosplay for your author's photo. Just for the first time. And you can always change it later on, I think. But that's neither here nor there. So I'm going to link all of my socials. You can follow me there as well. And also, I have a original series that I'm trying to make. I guess not original series, but the concepts of my OCs. I also have that linked in my description as well. So thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. And let's hope we don't have a fucking energy crisis by the time July hits.